Starting off this countdown, we have Paul Walker. On November 30th, 2013, Paul Walker attended a charity event for Reach Out Worldwide. He was last captured driving off in a red Porsche Carrera GT. Little did he know that later that day, the car would crash into a concrete lamppost and 2 trees before bursting into flames, killing Walker and the driver instantly. It's so sad looking at this photo. Like, Paul seemed happy. He got into the car not knowing his fate. In fact, what makes this scarier is that he might have still been alive had it not been for one text. He woke up that morning completely forgetting about the charity event that he had to go to. That was until someone texted him to remind him. Had he not gone to the event and just stayed home, things would have been different.
Coming in at number 9, we have Robin Williams, one of the greatest actors and comedic minds that has ever passed through Hollywood. There was movie after movie that this guy made that influenced people from my generation and so many generations after. And right before we get further into this point, guys, remember that you can like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell, and stick around to the end of the list because we're going to be answering some comments from our previous video, Top 10 Disney Mysteries. I mean, we can go down the list. This guy was in Aladdin, Jumanji, Mrs. Doubtfire. All of those movies were certified bangers, and this was the last picture of him before he passed. He looks so happy. He's chilling out with his monkey Crystal, and the two of them are just being the best of friends. But even having one of the coolest pets of all time wasn't enough to keep him happy. Unfortunately, shortly after this picture was taken, Robin Williams would visit the doctor and get a very sad diagnosis. It would seem that he had Parkinson's. It was devastating news that would lead to him taking his own life. Apparently, he was misdiagnosed and he actually had a specific type of dementia which leads to paranoia.
In our 8th spot, we have Amelia Earhart. The fate of Amelia Earhart is still unknown. Did she die in a plane crash? Did she get stranded on a deserted island? We honestly don't know. In 1937, Amelia set out with her navigator Fred Noonan to fly around the world. One of the last photos of Amelia was her packing her suitcase for travels, in which she would never return from. Much like these other celebrities, she looked so happy, just excited to go on this adventure. But little did she know it would end in tragedy. Amelia and Fred were last heard from on July 2nd, 1937. The government spent 15 years looking for them. In fact, searching for Earhart was the largest and most expensive search in American history. Sadly, hardly anything came of this. They thought that maybe the plane crashed somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, but who really knows?
Coming in at number 7, we have Gene Wilder. It's impressive how Gene Wilder was able to be both hilarious and terrifying in many of his performances. Like, throughout most of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he's kind of scary, but then when you check out Blazing Saddles, he's one of the funniest dudes around. This was the last picture taken of him, or at least the last one that was shared to the public. He lived well into his 80s, and in this picture you can see him with his daughter walking in Los Angeles. It was in 2013 when one of the most famous actors in the world would learn that he was battling Alzheimer's. This is obviously a very strenuous disease, and it can slowly wither a person away. It's a tough battle, and because of this, Gene wanted to stay out of the public eye. So after he was told by doctors that he was fighting Alzheimer's, he decided that he would stay out of the peering eye of fans and become a homebody. And I mean, it sounds like a solid move. You had an amazing career, so in your last few years it would be nice to relax. He passed away in 2016.
Coming in at number 6, we have Chris McCandless. Chris was a 24-year-old American adventurer. In 1992, Chris set out on another adventure, this time into the Alaskan wilderness. However, he never made it out alive. His death has been debated for years. Some say he died of starvation, others believe that he died of poisoning after eating toxic berries. The last photo ever captured of Chris was a picture he took of himself smiling and waving to the camera, holding a note. The note is believed to have said, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye and may God bless all." Later, he was found dead by a group of hunters. The hunters were looking for a shelter for the night when they came across the bus where Chris was staying in. But when they entered, they discovered Chris laying in his sleeping bag at the back of the bus. His manes were already decomposing. Now, the last thing Chris ever wrote read, "Day 107. Beautiful blueberries." Then days 108 through 112 contained no words, they just had slashes. And on day 113, there was no entry at all. So maybe it was some toxic berry that killed him. But still, this photo is super eerie, especially because of the sign he was holding. It's like he knew he wasn't going to make it.
Coming in at number 5, we have Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest minds to ever grace the earth. This dude was straight up one of the smartest people who has ever lived. lived. If it wasn't for this guy, we wouldn't have the radio, we wouldn't have access to electricity the way that we do today. And even though he has nothing to do with the company Tesla that makes electric cars, there would be a solid chance that those electric cars wouldn't be running right now if it wasn't for the inventions that this man made. This was the last known picture of the inventor. He looks like he was ill, but he was actually mostly thin because he had changed his diet to eating very light. He wouldn't eat meat and he mostly lived off bread, honey, and vegetable juices. Probably the saddest part about the end of Tesla's life is that he basically had no money, although he did find pleasure in pigeons. For some reason, the inventor had an obsession with pigeons. He would go to the park and feed them, and even said that they gave him some of the ideas for his inventions. That's the secret. We've got to start hanging out with more pigeons.
In our fourth spot, we have James Dean. On September 30th, 1955, James Dean died in a car accident at only 24 years old. It's said that he was driving fast and suddenly had to swerve out of the way to avoid an oncoming car, but ended up hitting it almost head on. It's said that Dean died instantly, but his passenger survived with injuries. That day, Dean was photographed posing with the very car he later died in. In fact, that car is said to be cursed. He only owned it for 9 days before his death. Later, after he died, the car rolled off the back of a truck and crushed the legs of a mechanic. Then the car's parts were disassembled and installed into other cars around the world. All those car owners also got into deadly crashes. So Dean's last picture was literally with a cursed car that killed him.
Coming in at number 3, we have Aaliyah. Aaliyah was a rising star in the R&B community, and it seemed that she was going to be the next star in the music industry. Literally everyone who was into music was talking about her. Before she was 22 years old, she had already won 14 awards and been nominated for 73 awards through different music organizations. There's a good portion of us who don't even have our driver's license at 22, but her death would shock the world. Either one of those two pictures is thought to be the last of Aaliyah. They didn't have timestamps on every last picture back then, so we don't know exactly which one it is. But Aaliyah would board a plane that was headed to the Bahamas. It should have been a nice short trip, but the plane crashed. Out of nowhere, the next big thing in music was gone.
In our second spot, we have John Lennon. On December 8th, 1980, John Lennon was assassinated outside of his Manhattan apartment. Earlier that day, Lennon was photographed signing autographs for fans. The last photo of him was him signing an autograph for the man who would later murder him. It's so eerie. The photo literally foreshadows his fate. He was literally pictured with his killer. Later that night, the man in the photo, David Chapman, returned to Lennon's apartment and waited outside for him. When he came down, Chapman shot him 4 times in the back. That's just way too freaky for me.
And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Marilyn Monroe. I mean, what didn't Marilyn Monroe do? It's thought that she changed how women could represent themselves in the public eye. She was one of the biggest beauty icons of all time. It's thought that she had an affair with the President of the United States. She was a bona fide legend, and she may never be forgotten. This was the last known picture taken of the superstar. She was hanging out with one of her buddies, Buddy Greco, who was a famous jazz musician of the time. Man, jazz has changed a lot. It used to be the coolest thing in town. There's no way you could be playing jazz now and it would get you into the arms of Scarlett Johansson. On the record, her death was deemed a suicide, but off the record, it seemed that the CIA might have taken her out. She knew too many secrets from being close to the president. They couldn't let those secrets leak out.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Sir Isaac Newton. Alright, yeah, we'll start this list off back in the early 1700s. Why not? Let's start crying back in the olden days. Sir Isaac Newton lived until he was 80, and back in the 1700s, living until you're 80, why, that's practically unheard of, right? That's insane. Newton started to experience digestion issues, but come 1727, he blacked out and never woke up again. The man died at 84. His last words were sad, of course, as are all of these on this very sad list that I'm doing, in a hopefully not sad way. But they go as follows. I don't know what I may seem to the world, but as to myself, I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore and diverting myself now and then and finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than the ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. What exactly that means? Let's all talk about it in the comments. Let's try and decipher that. There we go. Number 9, John F. Kennedy. A little more recent, jumping to the 1960s, President John F. Kennedy was killed while riding in a motorcade. We all know this one, of course. I don't have to go into grim detail about what happened here. He was riding alongside his wife, of course, First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, and in front of him there was Texas Governor John Connally and his wife Nellie. They were all rolling along when Nellie said to John, "You certainly can't say that the people of Dallas haven't given you a nice welcome. The president then said back, "No, I certainly can't." And just moments later, that's when he met his fate. Number 8, Alfred Hitchcock. This man went out with a zinger. Classic, what a classic drama queen. Alfred Hitchcock worked alongside famous painters and literary figures throughout history. He's an icon. He teamed up with Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart, Dorothy Parker, you name it. In his 1945 film Spellbound, Alfred even brought on Salvador Dali, like the real Salvador Dali, to help him with the film's dream sequences, right? He had a vision, he knew what he was doing. He also terrified many people for years to come. It's also a fun one. Hitchcock is known for going great lengths to keep his endings a secret, like Psycho, for example, a 1960s classic. The ad department for the film told audiences to please not give away the ending, as it's the only one they have. That's fun, that's cute. Weirdly mirrors his last words in real life. As he was dying, Alfred said, "One never knows the ending. One has to die to know exactly what happens after death, although Catholics have their hopes." That sounds very Alfred Hitchcocky. Number 7, Steve Jobs. A little more modern, there we go. When I was making this list, I couldn't believe how long it's been since Steve Jobs has passed away. It's been a while. The tech icon's last moments were in 2011. He was surrounded with love. He had beside him his sister Patty, his children, and his partner Lorene. Steve looked above them and said, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." He said "oh wow" 3 times. That's pretty heavy stuff to hear. Steve's last moments were shared furthermore when his sister wrote in his eulogy, "Even now he had a stern, still handsome profile, the profile of an absolutist, a romantic." Number 6, Nostradamus. I predict that you'll hit that thumbs up. That's inappropriate, but we try our best. The astrologer's last words were in itself predictions. And this last prediction he sadly got right. Nostradamus, full name Michel de Nostradam, published a book on prophecies back in 1555, and in it he had 942 pieces of writing. He had these poems that told the future, right? These texts have supposedly hinted towards the JFK attack, meteors hitting Earth, the invasion of France, global warming, you name it. He said some eerie things about such topics, and he also predicted his own death. On paper, he did. It was his last ever prediction. It was July 1st, 1566. His priest said to him, "Until tomorrow," and Nostradamus replied, "You will not find me alive at sunrise." Sadly, he was correct. Number 5, Beethoven. Another icon, another staple in history, the German composer Ludwig van Beethoven. We've recently heard his work in theaters. In Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange fights the villain with musical notes. He uses these notes. He uses Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 in C minor. Now we've heard Beethoven in IMAX, right? What a time to be alive. When Ludwig was still alive, he faced many health problems. Hepatitis, jaundice, skin diseases, cirrhosis of the liver, and of course, deafness. When his time came on March 26, 1827, the composer was believed to have said, "Applaud, my friends, the comedy is over." This is false. This is not true at all. Beethoven's close friend, Anselm Hüttenbrenner, who was very much present during his friend's passing, he said his last words were about the case of red wine that had just been delivered from his publisher. Ludwig's true last words followed, and they were, "Pity, pity, too late." About the wine. Fair. More than fair. It was a little too late. Number 4, Marie Antoinette. Another older one, but I figured I'd go more Victorian for this list, you know? Instead of like recent celebrities, that's only depressing. We don't want to talk about those. During the height of the French Revolution, Louis XVI of France and Marie Antoinette were both charged with treason. The phrase, "let them eat cake," is often associated with Mrs. Antoinette in this case, but her last words were actually an apology. Not to the people in which they owed it to, but to the executioner whose foot she stepped on whilst approaching the guillotine. Yeah, shows like Game of Thrones make it look easy to say something cool right before your, demise. In reality, I would beg for my life. Looking up at this dude? Yeah, I would plea. I'd be like, please don't do this. I really don't want this to happen. Number 3, Bob Marley. Of course, we have to mention the one and only reggae legend, Bob Marley, okay? Cancer was the reason that this icon met his fate early. The big C, once again. Marley was only 36 years old when he passed away in 1981. Next to him, he had his son Ziggy, and to him he shared the final words. And I think we could all learn a little something here. He said to Ziggy, "Money can't buy life." Yeah, I'll say that again. Money can't buy life. Not happiness, life. Bob Marley's death was so impactful that the Jamaican government turned this sad day into a national holiday. Yeah, that's a great idea. Live some more of that life. Take the day off. Blast some Marley and, You know the rest. Stuff I can't talk about, light some candles, right? That's an ideal way to mourn somebody as impactful as Bob Marley. I'm here for it. Number 2, Giles Corey. Out of the 27 people who had their lives taken away from them during the 1692 Salem witch trials, 19 were hanged, 17 passed away in prison while serving their sentence, and the last victim, Giles Corey, refused to plead either innocent or guilty. And the law at the time states that you can't be tried otherwise, so he did what was ultimately best for him and his family and his estate. The townsfolk laid a heavy board on top of the 81-year-old man during the witch trials and all that nonsense, and then over the course of 2 days, boulders were slowly added, making the weight more and more unbearable. They were hoping that Giles would admit something, either being innocent or guilty, whatever the case, but every time they asked him anything, Giles responded with, "More weight." How epic is that? Extremely brave. This is something like, it sounds easy, but in reality, I would never do this. I would fold immediately. I would be like, this is so hard. But sadly, after 2 days of this torture, Giles passed away. He fought for so long and did what he could, because if he had gone either of the other 2 ways, Giles would have his property taken away from the town. But since he passed away not admitting guilt, he was still in full possession of his estate, which immediately went to his son-in-law. And finally, number 1, Robin Williams. Okay, I wanted to end on one that really hit home for me personally. I try and bring comedy into these lists whenever I can. It's like, cursed dolls that will haunt your family. I'm like, okay, I try and jazz it up a bit. I try and add some physicality to it whenever I can, brighten the mood. Because I was raised watching this man right here. Robin sadly passed away in August 2014. I was 19 at the time. I still remember the day, right? It was the first celebrity death that actually did something to me physically. And I don't mean for that to sound sensitive, but I grew up with this man, right? He was like Hook, Aladdin, robots, so underrated, right? Robin's wife Susan Schneider Williams revealed her husband's last words in an interview with ABC. And when the couple was getting ready for bed the night before, his last words were, "Good night, good night." Yeah, I wanted to end on a nice, good, peaceful note instead of something horrible from the 1700s. There we go.
Starting off this countdown, we have Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini was a well-known escape artist and magician. He did tricks like escaping from a straitjacket, or from being buried alive, or from a Chinese water torture cell. Sadly, he passed away in 1926. However, his dying wish was for his wife to follow a specific set of instructions that he left for her. The instructions informed her on how to contact him from the other side. He wished for her to come to his grave every year and perform a ritual known as the Sense. He believed that this would allow her to contact him. Who knows if she ever followed through with that though. Moving on, number 9, we have Elizabeth Taylor. And if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Elizabeth Taylor was a very famous British actor, known for being in films like The Father of the Bride and Cleopatra. She was also recognized for her beauty, but one thing she was known for in the industry was arriving fashionably late to events and parties. That was just the way that she rolled. So it's not a surprise that her final request was to be late for her own funeral. And people honored this wish, and she was taken 15 minutes late to her graveyard. And at number 9, we have Sean Connery. Fans were shocked when news broke last month that actor Sean Connery had passed away. He's probably best known for his role as James Bond. Sadly, on October 31st, Connery at the age of 90 passed away in his sleep. His son claims that he was unwell for some time. His final wishes were that he could be brought back to Scotland and be laid to rest there. Now, this plan is delayed because of COVID, but his family is doing everything they can to make sure his final requests come true. Coming in at number 7, we have Robert Bud Dwyer. Robert Bud Dwyer was a Pennsylvania state treasurer. Shockingly, he was more famous after his death than he was living. Why? Well, it's for a pretty dark reason. So basically, back in 1987, Robert was accused of taking bribes and being politically corrupt. On January 22nd, he went on live TV for a news conference to discuss these claims. It was also assumed that he was going to resign from office. However, at the end of his speech, he took out a gun and right before he took his life, he said, and I quote, "Please leave the room if this will affect you." He then backed up against the wall and pulled the trigger. His last requests were literally for people to look away as he took his own life. What's worse is that the next day, they discovered he was innocent. In our 6th spot, we have Barry Eugene Carter, aka Barry White. Barry White was an American singer-songwriter. He had that deep, smooth voice that's just so soothing to your ears. Unfortunately, in May of 2003, Barry suffered a stroke while waiting for a kidney transplant. A couple of months later, his body gave up on him and he passed away. However, in his last few moments, Barry said, "Leave me alone, I'm fine." Shortly after, he passed away. So his last request was to be left alone. I guess he just wanted to pass away in peace. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball was an American actress best known for being the star of the show I Love Lucy and The Lucy Show. She was a pretty big star back in her day and is still an icon. On April 18th, 1989, she complained of having bad chest pain, and so she was taken to a medical center. It was discovered that she had a dissecting aortic aneurysm. She successfully completed the surgery, which took 7 hours. But less than a week later, she woke up with bad back pain and then lost consciousness, never waking up. While suffering from the bad back pain, she was asked if she needed anything, in which she replied, "My Florida water." That was her last request. Florida water, interesting. And at number 4, we have Jack Daniel. Jack Daniel is the founder of Jack Daniel's Whiskey. Now, just before his death at age 62 on October 9th, 1911, Jack requested one last drink. That was his final request, to have one last alcoholic beverage. But he didn't die from the drink. No, it said that he died from blood poisoning. Rumor has it that Daniel kicked a safe in anger when he couldn't open it, and this injured his foot. From there, an infection spread from his toes until it took his life. Moving on, number 3, we have Whitney Houston, another huge celebrity and icon that was incredibly talented. Sadly, on February 11th, 2012, Houston was found face down in her filled bathtub. A month later, the coroner ruled her death as an accidental drowning. Now, according to her assistant, her last words and her last request was, "I just want a sprinkled cupcake. Get 2, I swear, get 2, but I won't eat but 1. Moments later, she was found dead. Moving on, number 2, we have Napoleon Bonaparte, not Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon was a military leader during the French Revolution and helped conquer a lot of Europe. He died on May 5th, 1821. Now, his death alone has been quite debated. Some say he was poisoned. Others say he had stomach cancer. Either way, when he was dying, he instructed others to shave him bald and then distribute his hair to friends. It's a pretty weird last request if you ask me. But maybe it was his way of being like, "My friends, I will always love you. Here's a lock of my hair to remember me by." But then later, arsenic was found from his hair, leading people to believe he was poisoned. So maybe he did this on purpose, so people would know he was murdered. Who knows? And in our number 1 spot, we have Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was referred to as the king of pop. He came out with so many hit songs, which are still amazing to this day. But sadly, on June 25th, 2009, Michael Jackson on propofol. His last request was also the last thing he ever said, which was more milk. Milk is the name he had given propofol because of its milky appearance. Propofol is a hospital-grade anesthetic, which he would get his doctors to give him. So his last request was for the one thing that would later kill him. Starting off this countdown, we have Brittany Murphy. Brittany Murphy was an iconic actress in the late 90s to early 2000s. She was well known for the movies Clueless or Uptown Girls, and it was such a tragedy that she had to pass away at such a young age. She had such a bright future ahead for her. Sadly, on December 20th, 2009, Brittany passed away. Shortly before this, she had called her mom and said, "Mom, I'm dying." Imagine hearing those words coming out of your daughter's mouth. It just breaks my heart. It said she passed away from pneumonia, an iron deficiency, and from having multiple drugs in her system. In our 9th spot, we have Elvis Presley. Alright, so Elvis Presley. Do I even have to explain who Elvis was? Like, if you don't know who he was, then wow, you might be a little too young to watch these videos. I'm kidding, but he was just a huge superstar. On August 16th, 1977, Elvis had gone to the dentist in the morning and then returned home to his fiancée. At some point, he told her that he was, and I quote, "going to the bathroom to read," in which she replied with, "Don't fall asleep in there. It was a joke." And he replied with, "Okay, I won't." Those were his last words. She then proceeded to have a nap, and a couple hours later she woke up to find that he never came out of the bathroom. He had passed away in there. This just makes his last words so haunting. What's even worse is that he proposed to her on January 26, 1977 in that bathroom, the same place he passed away. In our 8th spot we have Prince, a huge rock legend that was known for his elaborate stage outfits and amazing voice and vocal range. Prince was performing almost every night in high heels. As a result, he developed bad back and hip problems, leading him to need some serious painkillers. He was prescribed a fentanyl patch to help with the pain, which later would contribute to his overdose on April 21st, 2016. Before he passed away, he had been on the phone with his lawyer. Prince assured him that he was fine. He said he was doing perfect. And then he said, "Okay, I'll call you soon." Prince never called back. He passed away shortly after. Moving on to number 7, we have Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix was an American singer-songwriter and musician. To this day, he's considered one of the most influential electric guitarists. Now, according to his girlfriend, Jimi spent his last day in London with her. She claimed that he had made a meal for them at her apartment at around 11 at night, accompanied with a bottle of wine. At around 1:45, she drove him to his friend's house and then picked him up a couple hours later. The last words he ever spoke were to his girlfriend, and they were, "I need help bad, man." The next morning, she found him unconscious and unresponsive. He passed away shortly after. In our 6th spot, we have Kurt Cobain. I just realized that there are a lot of great musicians on this list. Like, it's sad that they left this world so soon. Kurt Cobain was a singer-songwriter for the band Nirvana. Sadly, in 1994, he took his own life. He was only 27 years old. His last words were found in a note that he left. In the note, he quoted Neil Young's lyrics. He said, "It's better to burn out than fade away." And those were his last words. And from them, we can kinda interpret that he wanted to go out being famous instead of being forgotten. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Coco Chanel. Coco Chanel, of course, you know her for being the founder of the luxury brand Chanel, which is still huge to this day. I wish I could afford it. I can't. Sadly, she passed away on January 9th, 1971 from old age. She was 87 years old when she passed away, and she was getting pretty frail. On the day of her death, she went out for a long drive. When she returned home, she wasn't feeling well and went to bed early. Her final words were to her maid, and she said, "You see, this is how you die." That's pretty dark if you ask me. What's freaky is how a lot of these celebrities knew that they were passing away. Like, they can feel their body giving up on them or something. Somehow they just know that it will be their final day. Moving on to number 4, we have Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was an American film and TV actress. She started off as a dancer for a number of theater companies and then went on to be on Broadway. From there, her career took off and she was in a number of impressive films. Sadly, on May 10th, 1977, she passed away from a heart attack at the age of 73. While this was happening, apparently her maids were praying for her, and her last words were telling them off. She said, "Damn it, don't you dare ask God to help me." And then she passed away. Wow, I bet those maids felt really bad after that. Coming in at number 3, we have Michael Jackson. Now, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the King of Pop's death, but in the end, he passed away after on propofol, the drug he was addicted to and constantly had his doctors administer him. The last thing he ever said was "more milk." Milk was the name he had given propofol because of its milky appearance. So his last words were asking for the thing that would later kill him. In our 2nd spot, we have Princess Diana. On August 31st, 1997, Princess Diana got into a car with her rumored boyfriend. However, the driver of the car was very intoxicated and ended up driving at a very high speed when he lost control of the car and smashed into a pillar. The driver and her boyfriend died instantly. The paparazzi that had been following the car watched this tragedy unfold before their eyes. Diana suffered from a concussion, broken arm, cut thigh, and massive chest injuries. When the paparazzi came to her rescue, they heard her say, "My God, what's happened?" That's the last thing she said. She passed away later in the hospital as a result. And in our number 1 spot, we have Chris Farley. Chris Farley was an American comedian and actor known for being on Saturday Night Live or in movies such as Coneheads and Wayne's World. Farley's last day was December 17th, 1997. The weekend prior, he spent it partying and doing drugs with a lady of the night named Heidi. On the Wednesday, the two were doing some heavy drugs. When she got up to leave, Farley apparently said, "Don't leave," and then he passed out. She took a photo of him and then left. That's so sad. The last thing he ever said was him pleading for her to stay so that he wasn't alone. The next day, Chris's brother found him still lying on the floor close to the door. He was found clutching rosary beads. He had passed away from drugs. And I bet Heidi felt really bad after that, and also because she has a picture of him. Starting off this countdown, we have Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is famous for co-founding Apple, of course. But sadly, in 2003, he was diagnosed with an unusual form of pancreatic cancer. On October 5th, 2011, almost exactly 8 years since he was first diagnosed, he lost his battle to cancer. According to his family, Steve's final words were, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." He said it 3 times. Then he lost consciousness and died several hours later. They also said that he first looked at his sister Patty, then over to his children, and then to his partner, and then over their shoulders past them. And that's when he said, "Oh wow." So what was it that he saw over their shoulders? Was it the white light everyone talks about? In our 9th spot, we have Steve Irwin, but before I go any further, please make sure to give this video a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. Steve Irwin, otherwise known as the crocodile hunter, was known for getting up close and personal with dangerous creatures like crocodiles or venomous snakes. It seemed like nothing scared him. Sadly, on September 4th of 2006, while filming a documentary called Ocean's Deadliest, Steve got pierced by a stingray's barb. The barb went right through his chest, piercing his heart. Crew helped him onto the boat as he started to bleed to death. One of the crew members, Justin, tried to comfort Steve and said, "Think of your kid, Steve. Hang on, hang on, hang on." One of the crew members, Justin, tried to comfort Steve and said, "Think of your kid, Steve. Hang on, hang on, hang on." Steve just looked up at him and said, "I'm dying." And that was the last thing he said. And at number 8, we have Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was an American singer and actor that won a number of awards, like an Academy Award, 3 Golden Globes, multiple gold discs, and a Lifetime Achievement Grammy Award. But after being very ill for a number of months, he had a heart attack and died shortly after. His wife was by his side comforting him while this happened, and she revealed that his last words were, "I'm losing it." It's so sad and scary. Moving on to number 7, we have Frida Kahlo. Famous artist Frida Kahlo was said to be one of Mexico's greatest artists. She began painting mainly self-portraits after a bus accident that left her severely injured. From there, her artwork became well known, and they were exhibited in Paris and Mexico before her death. About a week after her 47th birthday on July 13th, 1954, she passed away. Her last words were in her diary entry, and it read, "I hope exit is joyful, and I hope never to come back." Now, it's said that she passed away from a pulmonary embolism, but others believe that she took her own life. At that point in her life, she did have a couple of failed attempts. This was because she had to have her right leg amputated below her knee from a gangrene infection, and that really affected her. It's really sad that her final words are basically saying how she wanted to die and then never come back. In our 6th spot, we have Paul Walker. Paul Walker was an actor known primarily for the series The Fast and the Furious. He passed away on November 30th, 2013 after attending a charity event. Paul's last words were, "We'll be back in 5 minutes." This was said to Jim Torp, a man working at the event, but sadly, Paul never returned back. He got into a car that his friend was driving, and a little while later, they crashed into a concrete lamppost and 2 trees before it burst into flames, killing Walker and the driver instantly. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with John Lennon, an amazingly talented singer and songwriter who was the founder and co-lead vocalist for the Beatles. On December 8th, 1980, John Lennon was assassinated outside of his Manhattan apartment. The man that took his life was a fan that traveled all the way from Hawaii. Apparently, he didn't like Lennon's lifestyle and how he was portraying himself to the press. On that night, he waited outside of Lennon's apartment and then him 4 times in the back. Lennon's last words were, "I'm shot, I'm shot." He repeated it twice, and that was the last thing he ever said. Rest in peace, John Lennon.
Witnesses told police Lennon was shot near the door to his apartment building as he and Yoko Ono returned from a recording studio.
I saw John and Yoko get out of the limousine. They walked into the gate.
Moving on to number 4, we have Mozart. Mozart was a very well-known and talented composer. He got into music very early on in life and was extremely gifted. But on December 5th, 1791, he passed away at the age of 35. And of course, there's a bunch of theories as to how he died. Some say he was poisoned by his rival, but it's believed that he died from a disease that led to a severe fever, causing him to slip into a coma. But we still don't know what disease led to his death. Anyways, one of the last things he ever said was, "The taste of death is upon my lips. I feel something that is not of this earth." I mean, that's very artistic, but also it's sad because he knew that he was going to pass away soon. In our 3rd spot, we have Nostradamus. Nostradamus was a very famous man known for being a prophet. Apparently he could see into the future, and honestly a lot of his predictions have come true, so people believe that he was legit. Well, Nostradamus actually predicted the exact date of his death. On July 1st, 1566, he made sure to tell his priest all of his last predictions, because he knew that the next day he was going to die. The priest ended the conversation saying, "Until tomorrow," and he replied with, "You will not find me alive at sunrise." He died that night. His last words to another person were, "Tomorrow I shall no longer be here." That's pretty freaky. In our 2nd spot, we have Amy Winehouse, another super talented individual. Like, her voice is incredible. It sends shivers down my spine. But on July 23rd, 2011, Amy passed away from alcohol poisoning. The night before her death, Amy Winehouse met with her doctor and told her that after 3 weeks of being sober, she started drinking again because she was bored. The conversation ended with Winehouse saying, "I don't want to die." And that was one of the last things that she ever said. The next day, the bodyguard found her laying in the same position as she was a couple hours prior. He checked on her, and that's when he knew she was gone. Now, this one breaks my heart because she literally was so worried about dying, and then the very next day, the very thing that she feared happened. And in our number 1 spot, we have Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger was a well-known Australian actor known for starring in movies such as 10 Things I Hate About You, Brokeback Mountain, and The Dark Knight. Sadly, on January 22nd, 2008, he passed away from an accidental prescription. The night he died, he was on the phone with his sister who was worried about him. He told her that he was going to take sleeping pills on top of his prescription for a chest cold because he couldn't sleep, but she warned him not to. His last words were, Katie, look, it'll be fine, you know. I just need to get some sleep." Sadly, he never woke up. Starting off this countdown, we have the plot to kill. This photo was taken of Thomas Bart Whittaker on the left and his younger brother Kevin on the right, just hours before Thomas planned to have his family killed. So apparently the 2 brothers were just goofing off and their mother wanted to take a photo of them. Then later they went out for dinner as like a little celebration for Thomas completing his exams, which was a lie. Anyways, while they were at the restaurant, Thomas had his friend enter his home and retrieve a gun and stage a burglary. He then waited at the front door for Thomas's family to return home. Once they did, he shot Thomas's mom and brother. His dad managed to survive. The photo shows Thomas's happy younger brother, but little did he know that his older brother literally had a plot to kill him. It's so disturbing. In our 9th spot, we have Victor Barrio. But before we go any further, if you guys are liking this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and of course, subscribe to our channel. Come on guys, it really helps us out, so hit that button, subscribe, ring that little bell. Victor Barrio was a 29-year-old Spanish bullfighter. Sadly, on July 9th, 2016, his bullfighting days came to an end when a 529-kilogram bull's horn pierced through his chest. This moment was captured in front of a live audience and also was broadcasted on live TV. Some people managed to get photos as this happened and it's horrifying. You can see the look of pain on his face as the bull's horn just plunges through him. Like, I feel so bad for him and for all the people that had to witness it. It's so scary. In our 8th spot, we have the Panama Hikers. Chris Kremers and Lizanne Froon were 2 young Dutch females that saved up to take a trip to Panama. Except while on a hike in the Panamanian jungle, the two disappeared. It wasn't until months later that their bodies were found, but it's still unclear how the two died. The last photos taken of them were in April of 2014, the day that they went on the hike. They are selfies of the girls looking very excited to be on the trip. These photos were found on their camera, which was found in a backpack along the banks of a river. The camera also contained other pictures, like of the jungle in the dead of night. Maybe they were using the camera's flash as a source of light. Another photo showed the back of Chris's head and it was bleeding. Again, it's so scary looking at these photos. Like, these poor young girls had no clue what was about to happen to them, and they were so excited for their trip. Coming in at number 7, we have the drowning. On October 22nd, 2003, Tina Watson and her husband, David Gabriel, went out scuba diving on their honeymoon. They just got married 11 days earlier, and scuba diving was part of their honeymoon itinerary. Now, in this photo, if you look right at the back, you can see a diver laying on the seafloor. That's Tina Watson. A few minutes before this photo was taken, it's believed that her husband turned off her air supply and held her underwater until she drowned. Then he swam up to the surface to alert other divers that she was in trouble. The photo was captured accidentally, and you can see the divers going to help Tina. Some say he held her underwater until she drowned. Others say he saw her struggling as a new scuba diver and just kind of left her there to die on her own. Either way, he pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and that was the last photo ever taken of her. In our 6th spot, we have the Dyatlov Pass incident. In February of 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers set out to traverse the snowy mountains of Siberia. However, they all ended up mysteriously dying one by one. This photo was one of the last photos taken of them. Now, this case has been debated about for years, and there's tons of theories as to what happened to them. Some say they were hit by an avalanche at night and died from exposure. Others say a Yeti got them. In fact, there was a picture of a creature that looks like a Yeti found on one of the explorers' cameras. But it's a very odd case. Like, their tent was found ripped open from the inside, 2 bodies were found and they were only wearing underwear in the freezing cold. Another explorer's body was missing her tongue, eyes, and lips, and 2 of the other bodies had major chest fractures. To cause someone that much damage, it would be like equivalent to a car crash. And another hiker had a really high level of radiation on their clothes. It's just crazy, and to this day we don't know what truly happened. We all have these theories, but the only ones that really know are the hikers in the photo. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the submarine murder. Back in August of 2013, freelance journalist Kim Wall got an interview with Danish inventor Peter Madsen. As part of the interview, Kim was set to take a trip on his homemade submarine. This photo shows Kim aboard the submarine just before her trip. Sadly, once inside, Peter. Why did he do this? Well, some say he became fascinated with. Evidence showed that he had been watching videos of women being killed on his computer, and shortly before he watched a video on it. So it was clear that he had a fascination with it. It's sad that Kim had to be his victim. In our 4th spot, we have the Facebook murder. A couple of hours after this picture was taken, Cheyenne Anton left, used the black belt she is seen wearing in that photo to Brittany Gargle. The two were best friends, but apparently got into a heated argument and Cheyenne hit and strangled Brittany. Imagine taking a selfie with someone you thought you could trust just for them to go and kill you a couple hours later. It is so sick. Now, Cheyenne actually got away with this murder for 2 years until police finally found this photo on her Facebook and noticed that the belt that she was wearing was the same one found at the crime scene. She then pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Moving on to number 3, we have parkour gone wrong. Pavel Kashin was known for his dangerous stunts and abilities. In 2013, he challenged himself to do a backflip on the edge of a 16-floor building. He successfully completed the backflip, but as he landed, he lost his footing and fell over the edge. He died instantly. This photo was captured by his friend while he was performing the stunt. You can see he's in mid-air doing his trick. Sadly, that was the last stunt he ever performed. And at number 2, we have the stalker. On February of 2017, best friends Abby Williams and Libby German headed out for a hike in Indiana. This photo is of Abby Williams, taken right before they were both. What's very disturbing is that in the background of these photos, you can literally see their lurking there. Apparently the man was stalking them for quite some time, and in the girls' photo roll, they actually got some pictures of him, probably because they felt like he was following them. So in the last photo ever taken of Abby, you can literally see her killer behind her. It makes me so sick. Worst of all, he's never been caught. There's currently a reward for anyone that can identify the man though, so hopefully they can get some justice soon. And in our number 1 spot, we have the gruesome scene. This photo is going to send shivers down your spine. But before I show you, let me give you a quick backstory. So this photo was taken of Travis Alexander while he was taking a shower. It was taken by his girlfriend and Jody shortly before she stabbed him 27 to 29 times. She also slit his throat nearly ear to ear and him in the head. It was a very gruesome and sinister murder. In this photo, you can see how uncomfortable Travis looks. It's almost as if he knew she was up to something. He looks absolutely terrified. Now, the camera that captured this photo was actually tossed into his washing machine as an attempt to destroy it, but it didn't work, and some of the photos were still salvageable, like this one and one that she took of Travis's dead, bloody body. I saw it. You don't want to see it. Starting off this countdown, we have the helicopter crash. In 2019, 32-year-old Benno Anthony Penna and his wife, Megan Michelle Hawk Penna, went out for a helicopter ride in Utah. Their plan was to fly to South Valley Region Airport in West Jordan. Their ETA was 2 p.m. When the pair failed to arrive, helicopters were sent out looking for them. Shortly before 6:30 p.m. that day, their helicopter was found. Sadly, they had crashed. This photo was posted just a few minutes before the deadly crash. Look how happy the pair look. Little did they know what was soon to happen. Now, authorities don't know for sure what happened, but it was reported that there was some heavy weather in the area that day. So maybe that's what played a role in the crash. It's a very tragic story. In our 9th spot, we have the drowning. On November 11th, 2017, fans of the Filipino TV star and dancer Franco Hernandez were heartbroken when they heard the news of his passing. On that day, he was out with his girlfriend and some friends on a small boat. This photo was taken that day just before a wave hit their boat, knocking everyone overboard into the water. Sadly, Franco drowned. The people operating the boat did manage to pull him and his girlfriend back onto the boat, but by that time he was already unconscious. He was immediately brought to a clinic but was declared dead on arrival. This is so sad because everyone was out enjoying their day, having fun. Little did they know what was going to happen. Moving on to number 8, we have the day the music died. February 3rd, 1959 is also referred to as the day the music died, because on that day, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and J.P. Richardson died in a plane crash. The three had been on tour together. That day, they boarded the plane and were headed out to the next stop on their tour, but the three men and their pilot never made it. Now the thing is, the trio had been taking a tour bus for the first half of the tour, but they said it was unreliable and freezing cold, so being fed up, they decided to take a charter plane. Had they continued on with the tour bus, they would have made it there alive. This photo was taken of the three artists right before they hopped on the plane. It's the last photo of them. Apparently, the pilot was unaware of a weather advisory that had been issued before takeoff. A short while after liftoff, the plane ran into troubles and crashed. Apparently, the scene of the crash was very gruesome. The three artists had been thrown from the plane in the crash. The pilot was trapped inside of the cockpit. Coming in at number 7, we have the cliff jumping. Several years ago, Naval Air crewman Shannon Nunez decided to take a celebratory jump at a popular cliff jumping spot in Hawaii. She was celebrating her recent qualifications as a Naval Air crewman. Jumping off this cliff was quite common in the area, but it's also very dangerous. The cliff is roughly 80 feet high. She took this photo before her jump. Little did she know what was going to happen. When she jumped, she ended up landing sideways. She then started to panic and drowned. Her two friends that were with her tried to save her, but it was far too late. She was so excited for this jump. She was so proud of herself and her accomplishments. It's just sad that it had to end this way for her. Coming in at number 6, we have the falling rock. This photo features a group of individuals who went out hiking. Little did they know what was going to happen a few moments later. Literally minutes after this photo was taken, a rock above fell and hit the man on the far right in the red shirt. it crushed him completely. He was dead upon impact. All his friends witnessed this happen to him, and that must have been traumatizing. Like, it was such a freak accident. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Burning Man Festival. The Burning Man Arts and Music Festival is an annual festival that takes place in the Black Rock Desert of Nevada. Tens of thousands of people gather from all over the world for it. Its main attraction is this big effigy that is then lit on fire. Well, during the festival in 2017, a man named Aaron Joel Mitchell ran right into the burning structure. He was burnt alive. To this day, his family does not know why he did this. He was not depressed, nor was he having thoughts of taking his own life. On top of that, a toxicology report showed that he did not have any alcohol or drugs in his system. But Aaron decided to dodge security and then run straight into the flames. Firefighters tried to stop him, but they were unsuccessful. When they did retrieve his body, it was far too late. This is the last photo ever taken of him. It's the moment he took his own life by running straight into the flames. In our 4th spot today, we have the birthday murder. On December 17th, 2017, 21-year-old Ismael Gutierrez and his friends went out for dinner to celebrate his 21st birthday. This photo was taken at his birthday celebration. Gutierrez is the young man holding the bottle. Later that night at around 3 AM, he had been shot along with a random female. The group had been at the wrong place at the wrong time. Gutierrez and the woman were both taken to the hospital, but sadly he did not make it. And the fact that this happened on his birthday when he just wanted to have a good time makes it 10 times sadder. In our 3rd spot, we have the cabin fire. A couple of years ago, Bethany and her friends decided to go to a cottage. They spent the day out on the lake and then had a nice barbecue dinner. This photo was taken of Bethany out enjoying her time at the cabin. Sadly, 6 hours after this photo was taken, Bethany lost her life. An ember from the grill sparked a fire on the cabin deck. Soon, the whole cabin went up in flames. All the friends were able to escape except for Bethany and a dog. This is why you hug your friends and family extra tight. It's sad, but you never know when their last day will be. In our 2nd spot, we have Cameron Boyce. On July 6, 2019, Disney fans were shocked when they heard that the talented child actor Cameron Boyce had passed away in his sleep. He was taken from us way too soon. He was only 20 when he passed, and he had a bright future ahead of him. Now, Cameron passed away in his sleep due to a seizure which was brought on from an ongoing medical condition for which he was being treated for. Still, no one saw this coming. This photo was one of the last photos ever taken of Cameron. A beautiful photo of a beautiful soul. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the armed robbery. On September 21st, 2009, Angela Escobar and Alex Santiago were sleeping peacefully when an armed robber entered their home and shot them both dead. The robber proceeded to grab some personal belongings before fleeing the scene of the crime. This is the last photo of Angelina. What a beautiful and innocent soul, taken far too soon. Eventually though, the killer was caught. His name is Christopher Doering. He was caught after taking a phone call in jail. On the recorded call, he admitted to shooting both Angelina and Alex, and then said, and I quote, "I have no sympathy at all, I can do that again. That don't bother me. That just makes me sick to my stomach. Rest in peace, Angelina and Alex."
So starting us off at number 10, we have the 41st President of the United States, the father of the 43rd President of the United States. Of course, we're talking about George Herbert Walker Bush, George H.W. Bush. He's passed away recently on November 30th, 2018 at the age of 94 years old. President Bush has lived a remarkable life. At 18 years old, he became one of the youngest aviators. He attended Yale University. He went on to become a millionaire by the age of 40 years old, and he founded his own oil company. Bush will always be remembered for his political views and for being very active in the humanitarian activities. At the age of 94 years old, he became the longest lived president in US history. The Bushes also became the second father-son pair to serve as president. The only other pair is John Adams and John Quincy Adams. Number 9, we have Aretha Franklin. She was an American singer-songwriter who is greatly known to be a civil rights activist. She was also an actress. Aretha Franklin has inspired millions of people, and during her funeral, Ariana Grande wanted to pay her respects, wanted to pay her tribute, so she performed one of Aretha Franklin's songs titled Natural Woman. You guys know it. Aretha Franklin was the first woman to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She had a very long and active career. Even this year, she performed on many TV shows. IMDb has credited her for 11 different performances, and that was for this year alone. She was even a part of Whitney Houston's documentary. Okay, moving into number 8.
It makes us feel good that everybody sings along with the song.
Steven Hellenberg also just recently passed away at the young age of 57 years old. Steven Hellenberg was famously known for SpongeBob SquarePants. There was supposed to be a SpongeBob movie titled It's a Wonderful Sponge in 2020, but I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that. It was currently being filmed. Steven Hellenberg was an American animator, cartoonist, and he was a marine biology teacher. That's why he became fascinated with underwater creatures. I mean, it makes sense. Number 7. Burt Reynolds passed away on September 6, 2018 at the age of 82 years old due to a heart attack. He died at the Jupiter Medical Center in Jupiter, Florida. There was 2 private memorial services for Reynolds in North Palm Beach, Florida. Burt Reynolds has been around Hollywood since the late 50s. His first TV series was titled Flight. Reynolds was also in 2 movies this year. Next up on our list, at number 6, we have Mac Miller. Mac Miller's death was a huge surprise. He was only 26 years old when he passed away due to a in his Studio City home in Los Angeles. Mac Miller will always be known as an amazing American rapper, singer, and record producer. He has accomplished so much in his life at such a young age. He has had many #1 hit songs. His most popular song on his YouTube account was Mac Miller Donald Trump video. It has over 159 million views, and it was actually produced more than 7 years ago. One of Mac Miller's most powerful songs was titled Self-Care. It's a deep song and music video. In the music video, you can see that he's trapped in a box and he has to fight for his life. It just seems like from his videos years ago to more recent, he has been struggling with a lot of things. This just goes to show you guys that money is nothing. You never know what people are going through in life. Mac Miller will always be remembered for all the great things he has done in the world. Rest in peace, buddy. Another great person who will be missed is Avicii. This legend comes in at number 5. Avicii passed away at the age of 28 years old, and he was famously known as a DJ remixer and record producer. He was very talented, and it seemed like he was on top of the world, but his world came crashing down on April 20th of this year when he committed. Again, just because from the outside looking in, it seems like people might have a lot of money, or is very happy, or a lot of people are like, well, he has a lot of money, why is he not happy? Well, for Avicii, he went way too soon. But in a short time, he left amazing memories. Avicii was just 16 years old when he started posting his remixes, which led him to his first record deal. I mean, 16 years old, what were you doing at 16? He has a ton of killer songs out there like Wake Me Up, which has over 1.7 billion views. Summer with Calvin Harris, that has over 1.2 billion views. Other big songs are Waiting for Love, A Sky Full of Stars with Coldplay, Avicii, Hey Brother, which is one of my favorite songs. Apparently coming up is Avicii documentary on Netflix. It would give us a heartbreaking look at his life. Moving into number 4 on our list, we have XXXTentacion. I can't believe that he was just 20 years old when he passed away. On June 18th, 2018, XXX was leaving a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida, when he was after a robbery went bad. 2 armed men robbed him, and then there was an altercation, there was a struggle. The gunmen took out their gun and shot him multiple times. The shooters fled the scene in their SUV. XXX was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. The police did find the people responsible and they were charged for first-degree murder without premeditation. XXX's funeral was an open casket service at the BB&T Center in Sunrise, Florida, where fans were actually allowed to pay their respects. His private funeral was the day after. XXX, well, he's left a huge legacy behind. He often brought awareness to mental health, and he has helped influence the hip-hop world. Moving into number 3. Vern Troyer, who will be forever known as Mini-Me, well, he passed away in April of this year at the age of 49 years old. He is greatly known as an actor, comedian, and stunt performer. Vern Troyer has been recognized as one of the shortest men in the world, but that didn't stop him from being one of the biggest Hollywood stars on screen. His first film was Baby's Day Out, where he actually played a baby stunt double. It's pretty funny. He became more famously known in 1999, the year that Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me came out. That movie is an instant classic. It is hilarious. Also, he's going to be seen in a movie that's coming out this year titled Hipsters, Gangsters, Aliens, and Geeks. Vern Troyer will also be known for his funny YouTube channel where he used to produce pretty often. Okay, how can we make this list and not include Stephen Hawking?
I feel a sense of achievement that I have managed to make these contributions. Despite having ALS, my motto is there are no boundaries.
That was actually his last speech given to the world. Pretty sad. Hawking has inspired and challenged the way we think for a very long time. It was a huge loss for mankind to lose such a person with so much knowledge. He has defined everything the world has tossed at him. He even inspired a very emotional movie about his life. It was a documentary. It's one of my favorite movies.
It has been a great joy to watch this man defy every expectation, both scientific and personal.
Stephen Hawking never gave up on himself or humanity. He is one of my biggest inspirations in life because no matter how hard life can get, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and Stephen Hawking, he proved that. There is not one person in the world that can compare their life with the life of the great Stephen Hawking. And finally, number 1, we have Stan Lee.
The man who brought heroes to life and bad guys to justice. Stan Lee created a comic book universe that was true to its brand name, a Marvel.
Okay, this was huge news when Stan Lee passed away at the age of 95 years old, and it was due to a cardiac arrest. Stan Lee was one of the hardest working men you will ever meet. Even in his 90s, he was still working.
Hey, don't give up on her, either of you.
We won't.
So that movie was released this year. Let me just list a few comics, big films, and TV shows that Stan Lee has been a part of. You have Captain America, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, X-Men, Spider-Man, Daredevil, there was Black Panther, Thor. I mean, this is just so incredible. Without Stan Lee, there'd be none of that. The mind of Stan Lee is just a mastermind.